Chair Mills, Chair Whitten, good afternoon, and members of the Housing Task Force. My name is Michael Frazier, and I'm here representing Americans for Prosperity with my colleague Liam Gallagher, and we're so fortunate to be here with Representative Richard White. So I want to start us off with why we're here and kind of give the people and the face value up to the why. In one of my most emotional journeys in life, I spent nights on Kentucky's college campuses, not as a guest speaker, but in my capacity as executive director of the Kentucky Student Rights Coalition. And this purpose was to meet students who do not have homes. These are students who are sleeping on couches, trying to figure out where they're going to live nearby after they graduate, and trying to look at the affordability issues. I've met young people who shower in gym locker rooms, beg classmates for meal swipes, and sleep in libraries praying not to be found. I've seen where they park their cars behind stadiums in the shadows of new dorms they'll never be able to afford, and trying to figure out how they're going to get by from next to next. But homelessness doesn't end at the edge of the college campus. It's everywhere. And the housing crisis fuels this. Not long ago, and as most of you all know, a friend, a dear colleague who's with me today, Dr. Rafif Ali, who's a faculty at KSU here in his personal capacity, we came together to run a homeless shelter in Madison County. And not too long ago, this time last year, a sheriff from Madison County pulled up to our shelter, Madison Home, and in the back seat was a 65-year-old woman trying to understand why her low-income apartment was being condemned and trembling. She had intellectual disabilities, she had SSI, but on limited income. The sheriff told me, either you take her or I drop her off in the woods off Boonesboro Road. Of course we took her. Because what kind of society leaves a senior citizen in the woods? The moment showed me how broken our housing system has become, where law enforcement had to choose between compassion and abandonment. But it's not just strangers, it's personal. Most of you all know about the incident where my father's trailer burned down. My father's on limited income, doesn't know how to read, and frankly is at the age of where he can't start a new career. My father is technically homeless. My parents have been trying to find housing in Powell County, home to the poorest city in Kentucky, where the average income is $22,000. The average rent for a one-room efficiency apartment there in Powell County, usually the average is $740. Over the past 2 years, it's become $930 a month. Nearly $1,000 in a county where jobs are scarce and wages are stagnant. This is what poverty looks like today in Kentucky. It's not just tents under a bridge, it's seniors, it's families, it's working people, and it's students trying to figure out what's next. And if we talk about work for investment, especially with students, that's one reason why they're driving out of Kentucky. Working people priced out of the most basic human need, a place to call home. We need change, but not more bureaucracy, not more red tape, and not more one-size-fit-all programs that fail the very people they're meant to serve. We need free market solutions that make it easier to build, to renovate, and to create more accessible places to live in Kentucky for every Kentuckian. Zoning restrictions, permitting barriers, and excessive regulations have choked the supply of housing for too long. The market can work if we let it. And as you have heard from earlier testimony, we certainly need to let the market come in. And that's why I'm proud to stand with partners who share this vision, people who believe in freedom, opportunity, and community-driven reform. So now I'd like to turn it over here to my colleague, Liam Gallagher, who will talk about some of these solutions and some of our proposals. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today. I want to begin acknowledging the powerful testimony that came before mine. The stories you heard of students sleeping in cars, seniors left with nowhere to go, and families priced out of even the most modest homes are not just anecdotes. They're a reflection of a housing system that's failing too many Kentuckians. These stories remind us that this is not just a policy issue, it's a human one. And they underscore why your work and the work of this task force is so important. My name is Liam Gallagher. I serve as the Legislative Director for Americans for Prosperity Kentucky. At AFP Kentucky, we believe that every Kentuckian deserves the opportunity to live in a home that meets their needs in a community of their choosing at a price they can afford. And I'll be honest, I have a personal stake in this issue too. I'm a recent college graduate, and like a growing number of young adults, I still live at home. So yes, I care about housing policy because I'd like to someday be able to afford a place of my own. Maybe give my mother her living room back before she kicks me out for not cleaning up after myself. The median age of a first-time home buyer in the United States is now 38. It's the oldest that it's ever been. It's not just a statistic, it's a signal that something is deeply broken. Many young adults are forced to rent, and as rent prices increase, the amount of money they're able to put into savings diminishes, putting home ownership further and further out of reach. One vital aspect of the American dream is home ownership. It's not for everyone, but for those that want it, they should be able to attain it. The ability to grow equity in a home is how many families here in Kentucky and across the nation build wealth for future generations. Home ownership allows people the ability and stability in their everyday lives. This is why when homes are affordable, we see higher birth rates and more people starting families. This is not just a supply issue, it's a policy issue. Government barriers at both the state and local level have gotten in the way of people being able to buy a home, and that's where this task force can make a real difference. At Americans for Prosperity Kentucky, we believe in bottom-up, community-driven solutions that remove barriers and empower people. Today, I want to share 4 specific policy recommendations that we believe can help unlock housing opportunity, reduce cost, and protect property rights across the Commonwealth. First, we urge the task force to support the Permitting Approval Timeliness Act, which would establish a shot clock for local governments to process housing permit applications. Right now, developers and builders often face long, unpredictable delays that drive up costs and discourage investment. Some studies have shown that for each month of delay for permitting, the price of a home can increase as much as $4,400. In Washington State, their Center for Housing Studies estimated that delays lead to an average of a $30,000 increase in home price. These delays can derail financing, inflate construction cost, and ultimately make housing more expensive for everyone. By requiring local governments to act within a specific time frame, say 60 or 90 days, we can bring greater certainty and efficiency to the process. This doesn't mean cutting corners. It means setting clear expectations and holding agencies accountable. Time is money, and predictability is essential to getting homes built. Second, we recommend the adoption of a By Right Housing Development Act. Under current law, even projects that fully comply with zoning and land use regulations can be subjected to lengthy discretionary reviews, public hearings, and political opposition. This adds unnecessary time, cost, and risk to development. By right development would allow projects that meet existing rules to be approved administratively without additional red tape. This reform would apply to a range of housing types from single-family homes to duplexes, townhomes, and even accessory dwelling units. It would preserve local control over zoning designations while streamlining the approval process for projects that already fit within those designations. The result is more housing, built faster, and at a lower cost. Third, we support legislation to limit frivolous third-party challenges to housing permits. Too often, lawful projects are delayed or blocked by lawsuits from individuals who have no direct stake in the development. These lawsuits can drag on for months or even years, adding legal cost and uncertainty that deter investment. We propose limiting the legal standing in these cases to directly adjacent property owners who can demonstrate clear and convincing evidence of material harm. This approach strikes a balance. It protects legitimate concerns while preventing abuse of the judicial process. It ensures that housing decisions are made based on facts and fairness, not fear or obstructionism. Finally, we recommend updating Kentucky's building code to allow for greater flexibility and innovation. While safety must always be a priority, overly rigid or outdated building codes get in the way of affordable housing. States like North Carolina have already modernized their codes. Last session, they passed House Bill 488, which expanded the types of properties that could be built under their less stringent residential code, and Kentucky should follow suit. A more flexible code can unlock housing and innovation, and it will make it easier to build homes that meet the needs of today's families. At Americans for Prosperity Kentucky, we believe that housing policy should empower individuals and not entrench bureaucracy. We support free market solutions that allow people to live where they choose, afford homes that meet their needs, and pursue better lives without unnecessary government interference. When housing is too expensive or too scarce, it limits mobility, stifles entrepreneurship, and undermines economic growth. But when we remove barriers and embrace innovation, we can create a commonwealth where more people can thrive. The stories you heard earlier are heartbreaking, but they're also a call to action. We cannot afford to let red tape, outdated regulations, or fear of change stand in the way of progress. By embracing the reforms I've outlined today, we can ensure that government regulations do not stand in the way of Kentuckians trying to build better lives. We stand ready to work alongside this task force in the General Assembly to advance policies that protect property rights, promote affordability, and strengthen communities across the Commonwealth. Thank you again for your time, your leadership, and your commitment to the people of Kentucky. Now I'd like to turn it over to my friend, State Representative Richard White.
Thank you, Lehman. Thank you for the committee. I'm Richard White, representative of the 99th District in Kentucky, and I want to bring up some issues that I was not aware of until the last 4 or 5 weeks in my area, and I think it's important to bring this to y'all's attention. And I'm going to read some comments from some constituents in my area and what their thoughts of when they're dealing with some inspectors that they, while they're building a new home or a place. And they pointed out some issues they thought would help the process, and I'd like to go over some of them. One of them was saying electrical inspections, you have to have a list of names to choose from. And only certain people cover certain counties. And once the inspector comes to inspect your property, you no longer have the right to get a second opinion. That inspector gains jurisdiction over your property. So what they say goes. So if you want to verify and get a second opinion, you can't. And they wish there was a requirement for all inspectors to cite the code ordinance, the KAR, the KRS, to which they are relying on when they find deficiencies. I've asked that information from my inspector twice and never got any response. Actually, after he failed the plumbing inspection, he never answered another email or call from myself or my husband, even despite leaving a note for us to call to discuss the deficiencies. We've never gotten a written confirmation that the plumbing or electricity passed inspection. It was all verbal. Without written confirmation, that would be really hard hill to climb for property owners in the state wanting to say that they are in violation when they really aren't. We've gotten written failures from the plumbing inspectors, but never confirmation that everything passed. One of them said we paid $1,000 for a water meter, waited 2 weeks before it was installed. Electricity is the same waiting period. We also had to get a septic system installed and inspected before we were allowed to have water meter installed. But we had to have water in the septic tank before it could be passed. How does that make sense? And I've heard stories that some of these people, we have contractors in surrounding counties that's commented to me that they refuse to put a water line in Rowan County because of the inspectors. And some that says when they do price a job in Rowan County, they'll go as high as doubling the price to install, just knowing they have to deal with certain inspectors in that area. A lot of them, well, I've had 2 or 3 that said that they got a septic tank permit from the health department. They had it installed. They came out and inspected it and said it looked fine. You can cover it up. The water inspector comes by, says you've covered up the septic tank and the lines. You haven't covered for me to see it. And things like that, it just is not common sense. One of them had hit solid rock digging their water line ditch, and they hired ram holes and so forth to try to get depth, and they could only get maybe 28 inches deep. Well, they failed it on that spec because, and the common sense says all they had to do was add more dirt on top instead of, little simple things like that. We had a new Mr. Gaddy's built there in Moorhead, and all inspections were passed. They was going to get their occupancy certificate to open and had their plans too, and they wouldn't pass the final inspection only because the toilet paper holder was only 1 to 2 inches off the height. They need to have some common sense situations like that where they could say, well, we'll go ahead and give you the permit to open, but we'll give you 2 weeks to get your toilet paper holder right. There are several people that will not even touch around county. We have a owner that has quite a few rental properties in our county and surrounding counties, and she told me, and she runs first-class operations, but she says she's not going to do any more construction in Round County or expand for any more housing because having to deal with the inspectors. She's going to wait till things change. And I just want to bring some of these issues. I think and I don't think that's a statewide problem. I think there's just certain areas or certain inspectors that get the God complex in them. They think they're above everybody else instead of trying to work with the public. And the public's the one that's paying their salary. I think they ought to be a little more humble and try to help and assist people trying to improve their area or build a new home and so forth. And I think it's definitely a problem in certain areas of our state.